Hello, and welcome to Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Today, we're bringing you a special episode hosted by Bill Michalisin, Executive Director of the Academy. In this conversation, Bill sits down with Academy President Tricia Matson to explore leadership, governance, and more. And now to their conversation.
Tricia, great to be with you today. You are almost halfway through your term as president for the Academy. And so this is a great opportunity to revisit your year thus far and talk about what we've accomplished and hopefully cover also what you have in store for the remainder of your term. But I wanted to start just on the general topic of leadership and get your thoughts on what has surprised you most about being president of the Academy. Not necessarily what people see, but just the part that people don't necessarily understand until they're actually in the seat.
Sure. Thank you. So something that I just did not appreciate is the way the broader actuarial community works together. So the actuarial organizations, as you know, we collaborate a lot with the SOA, the CIS, the CIA, the CCA. And I've just been really impressed with how supportive the actuarial organizations are of each other. Like, obviously, I knew there was collaboration, but I've just formed some really deep relationships with the leaders of those organizations. And it's just been really great to see that collaboration.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the excitement just when you get the leadership together is really something that sticks with you as well. Speaking of what has stuck with you, what have you taken from those interactions or just your experience as president, and how has it meant more to you as you've continued to be a leader in the profession?
So something that I will probably stick with me forever. As you know, I was asked to go speak at the Caribbean Actuarial Association meeting, and it's a crazy schedule when you're president. And so I did go. It was actually kind of worked out conveniently schedule-wise, but people were just so excited to have me there. It's just, again, like, it's so nice the way, the leadership is appreciated and how much we work together. And they had, I think, for the first time, 9 different presidents at the meeting. So it was just a wonderful event and wonderful people. So that, I think I'll just remember the hospitality for a long, long time.
That's great. A nice place to visit too.
So, yes, that was not so bad. It was a very quick trip, but it was beautiful for sure. And maybe I'll ask you, so I know you've worked with a lot of different presidents, and anything from your perspective that you would say feels different about the Academy right now compared to the past?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's interesting when you serve different presidents just because of the fact that we're cross-practice in nature. So we have presidents like yourself from life and then others from property casualty or health and retirement. And it's interesting. I think the thing I noticed the most is just the consistent passion for the profession and excitement about the Academy and where we are today and where we're going. I think that's what's so exciting about the fact that the Academy has been such a steady hand in regards to professionalism and public policy we just celebrated 60 years last year. Yet we're not stopping there. And I think that's what's exciting right now with the Academy and the board and the direction we're on, is that there's a lot of opportunity to push further and look at issues and understand our role, but also really dig into member value and what we're doing for our members and how we're helping lock arms with the other actuarial organizations to broaden the pipeline and talk to students. Even though we're not necessarily working directly with students, we do have a role. And I think the Academy's voice in professionalism and policy really does add to that pipeline discussion and how we get people excited about becoming actuaries and the role that we play, not just for those that we serve directly as clients and principals, but also just the broader society.
I mean, that's definitely something you see at the Academy very clearly, is just how much we can help broader society. It's great.
Yeah. I think that leads me to a question just around public policy and just the issues that we touch and the role actuaries do play. Oftentimes, people will say, actuaries are the best kept secret, which we all believe because we work with actuaries and we appreciate the value that actuaries bring. When you talk about things like climate change or AI or just, looking at retirement security or financial security, what do you think matters most about people's understanding of what actuaries do and how they add value to what people experience in their everyday lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think something like a place where I would see like maybe the biggest tie between what's going on right now and like the way the actuary adds value is around like access, affordability of insurance or even financial security, matching that financial security program to the need. So there's just so much happening right now in terms of like the rising cost of healthcare, the major gap in retirement security, all the issues like the climate issues impacting affordability of P&C insurance. And I mean, we're just one of the best suited, if not the best suited professions to kind of chime in on those issues and really help the public understand what drives those issues and then help policymakers with decisioning on how to address those issues so that we can have just safety for the public.
And you had the chance to participate in our annual Hill visits this year. Through those conversations, as well as just the other stakeholder engagement that you participate in, what is it that actuaries bring that's different to those conversations?
Yeah, so a couple things I'll say. I mean, the obvious one, I think that at least our profession knows, and I think a lot of the stakeholders do know, is the quantitative skill. So we really have like deep understanding of both the math behind the insurance and then the insurance or the financial security program itself. I think the part of our profession that people don't think about right away, but is also like huge in terms of us being a valuable resource, is that professionalism foundation. So it's one thing to have a profession that knows a lot, and then it's quite another to have a profession that, based on their code of conduct, their standards, their discipline process, really has to give you a transparent answer and disclose any limitations. And so our ability to kind of bring those two together, I think, is unlike any other profession out there.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I think it's not until those individuals talk to actuaries that they really understand the depth of knowledge and how the technical, quantifiable skills are relatable to everyday topics and issues that we're dealing with that we don't even know an actuary could weigh in on or let alone inform us about. On the flip side of that, those that are members of the Academy leverage the MAA designation. What do you think that means to not just the members, but also just those that those members serve? Like, what does it mean to the public per se?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll mention is that because the credential itself is mentioned in so many laws and regs in the US, I mean, it is meaningful to any of the stakeholders that need actuarial work based on those laws and regs. And I would say like a huge value to an actuary of being a member is that like it broadens what they can do. So they have a lot more flexibility in being able to move from job to job because some of the jobs are going to require having that credential. And then, I would just, again, go back to like it really represents that strong connection to serving the public, having a professionalism structure, like those critical skills, I think, that differentiate us from other quantitative professions.
That's great.
Do you think that as members and volunteers, we always communicate that? Like, are there ways we could get the word out better about the value?
It's a good question. I think sometimes we take for granted that folks understand what actuaries understand, right? I think our members and the actual profession itself, they're so deep on these technical topics and the issues, and they understand how they connect and how those interdependencies exist, right? When we talk about everything from life insurance to health insurance and retirement planning and financial security. Yet I think sometimes we need to take a step back and just talk about more holistically, what is the value proposition that an actuary brings to a conversation that may not always be technical, right? Because the actuary, although they live and breathe in models and they live and breathe in data, the general person that benefits from everything the actuary does may not understand all the ins and outs of those details. So bringing it to a higher level and just talking more broadly about the way an actuary does enhance value for the general public or for certain audiences like state regulators, right? Or federal agencies or those on the Hill that are making decisions on really complex topics. I think the actuary can really distill complex issues into very simple content. Yeah. And I think that's something that sometimes we take for granted because we live and breathe it every day, but we can take a step back and talk further about this is who we are, this is what we do, and this is something that really would benefit a general person that isn't as deep into the profession as those of us that are in it.
Yeah, no, totally agree. That's great.
So I think members see all the outputs, right? We talk a lot about the fact that every year we generate 300 plus publications, everything from ASOPs to issue briefs to comment letters to research reports. What do you think is really the tangible benefit for members beyond all the content of accessing and leveraging the resources the Academy brings to bear?
So I think one thing that our members don't necessarily all appreciate is the volume of education they have access to. Access to Academy learning. A lot of the content that we put together is like, again, very deep technical content that is meant to like provide input on a broad issue that impacts a lot of people, not just actuaries. And so combining that with like all the educational offerings that we have for members, there's just a ton of value there. And then the other thing I'll say is that it may be flipping back a little bit more to the stakeholder discussion is I think we're also very good at preparing some things that are meant for those non-technical audiences. And those, I think, actuaries could almost leverage, members or any actuary could kind of leverage as communication tools. So when we were on the Hill visits, we talked a lot about things like the longevity illustrator, the Social Security Challenge, the Climate Index, right? Because those are tools that they're right on our website. They're meant for general consumption, but they really use like the underlying quantitative analysis to like get at a problem in a way that anybody can understand. So there's a lot of great tools like that, as I think we both know, we need to continue to promote, publish, make sure people know that they exist and get out in front of the stakeholders with those.
Right. As a membership organization, we do focus a great deal on our members, which is appropriate. We also talk a lot about stakeholder engagement. I know that's a topic that's near and dear to your heart. Why do you think the relationships and the focus on stakeholder engagement is so important to an organization like the Academy?
So I feel like right now we're a little bit of a best kept secret. So we do so much good work. We have tons of amazing volunteers, amazing staff. Some of these issues that we've been talking about that are out there right now, affordability, retirement security, are huge issues. And if we are doing a lot of work to help with the solutions and no one knows that we're doing it, or they know, but we're not communicating it in a way that folks understand, it's almost not worth doing. So the onus is on us, I think, to get in front of those stakeholders and let them know how we can help, who we are, why we're adding value, the fact that we have this, structure that's meant to be objective, unbiased. So it couldn't be more important. I think it's one of the most important things we have to do.
Yeah. And I think to your earlier question about whether or not we talk enough about what we do and the value we bring, I think this is an area that our members and even non-members could talk more about just what is in place to support the profession, particularly around self-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that all 5 US-based actuarial organizations have adopted the same code, that is significant. And the fact that the profession is guided by a common code of conduct and has structures in place, like you mentioned, ABCD, that help to support reinforcement and compliance with that code. And I think that a non-actuary may not understand that, let alone why it's important. And I think that focus is critical. In line with that, what would you want non-actuaries to know about their profession and the Academy that supports it?
Yeah, so I would want non-actuaries to know, first of all, what an actuary is, how we bring value, the fact that we really are like stewards of financial security systems. We understand them and we can, do quantitative analysis to evaluate them and evaluate how they can protect the public. And then I think in terms of the Academy, just increasing awareness around what the Academy's role is, the fact that we are focused on serving the public. It is a very different mission than some of the other U.S. actuarial organizations. So having our stakeholders understand that we're really there to provide unbiased and objective advice on issues that impact the public. And that work should help a lot of our stakeholders in their day jobs. So getting that message out, I think, is really important. I know you often are having to translate what we do, which is very technical, into broader audiences that may not understand that. What do you think is the hardest part?
I think the hardest part is really just making sure that we really look at the key stakeholders that we're trying to engage, understanding what their needs are, and then mapping it back to and matching it to the work that we're doing. Because I think that translation is really what distills a complex issue to kind of terms that anyone could understand. And I think that makes it impactful. So just that translation and working with our volunteers and the volunteer groups to understand how to communicate that is really important, because if the stakeholder doesn't understand it or deem it relevant to what they're dealing with, then we've missed the opportunity. And I think that translation is so critical. It's just how we fulfill our mission to not just serve the public, but also to serve the profession itself. So, like I said earlier, you're halfway through your term. It's crazy to think. Seems like it's going fast. What would you say are the big wins for you as president, also you as you mentioned steward of the board, and what the board's been doing?
So there's a couple things that we got done kind of over the last year that I was involved in. So I'm going to touch on those, and then I'm going to move to my favorite topic, which you probably know what that's going to be. So there's been a lot of work on improving our internal governance, which is important because having a strong governance structure then turns into a better ability to do all the things we've already talked about. The other thing we spent a lot of time on is looking at reputational risk, an unusual place kind of in our country right now. The issues with access and affordability to financial security are higher than they've ever been. Our affiliation, just our mere affiliation with the prices of insurance, create some reputational risk for us. So we spent some time looking at that, interviewing folks, trying to hear more about what external stakeholders think of actuaries. And actually the results of that were very positive, but that will continue. And then again, the big focus area, of course, is the stakeholder engagement. We've spent a lot of time on that, which has been good. Really doing more of a top down, who are we trying to get in front of? Who are those most important stakeholders? What messages do we want to get in front of them? And then I think what's left to do around that is then to kind of connect that down to like all the work that the Academy does. So individual volunteers, committees, et cetera. Are we doing enough for the highest priority stakeholders? And then are there places maybe where we're spending a lot of time, to your point earlier, but there's not really an audience for that. We kind of need to redeploy those resources into something more important. So again, that'll take some time to embed, but I think we have a lot of positive momentum.
Right. And I think the nice thing about how the board operates, as well as just how the board interacts with our various practice councils, is just that those priorities and stakeholder focus may shift in a given point in time, right? Issues change, stakeholder priorities change, how we interact with them change. So I do think that the board's ability to be agile and nimble, as well as just our volunteers' ability to look at the environment and say, where can we make an impact? What is something the Academy should weigh in on versus perhaps it's not our space to play in? I think that's a critical aspect of the leadership the board has provided in the last few years.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, something that's been great in the role is, I get to sometimes, get in front of an insurance commissioner, get in front of congressional staff at the Hill visits, talk to chief actuaries. And I do feel like we have a very positive reputation. All those stakeholders have, very nice things to say about the Academy. And again, we just need to keep that forward momentum and keep working on those relationships.
Exactly. You mentioned the governance project. It's something that we've been working on now for a year, looking at the governance review. What would you want members to understand about the governance review and just why it's important to them?
Yeah, I think it's more focusing on the results. So I think members should care about the result of good governance. It's not that important for all members to understand the ins and outs of Academy governance. But I think, what governance means in terms of how we deliver value to the members and how they can leverage our resources to develop themselves. That's the part I think that is really meaningful. So if we have good governance, it allows us to provide members with more value and then also to provide more services and output to the general public.
No, I agree. I think part of the governance review that I really appreciate is it was really an opportunity for the board to continue evolving and maintaining the effective governance structure that's in place to guide the organization. So it wasn't necessarily an issue or a challenge. It was really the board's intent to make sure we're staying in line with governance trends. What are other organizations doing in this space and how can we improve, and bringing in a third party to help us look at that. So I just appreciate that transparency that the board has tried to establish in this project. And I think that benefits the organization, particularly as we continue to want to grow and evolve and make sure our impact is strong.
Yeah, agreed.
Similar to governance, we have a strategic plan. You've been heavily involved in that and reviewing that. And obviously, that plan has goals and it has objectives. Why do you think the existence of that plan is so important to the Academy?
Yeah, so I think central to all the pillars of the strategic plan is the value of the actuary, right? So everything that's in that plan is related to the fact that, actuaries are valuable, that we can do a lot to, help the public, the profession, our stakeholders, our employers. It covers a lot, but everything kind of relates back to how actuaries are adding value with their work. And so I think executing on this is good for the profession. It's also good for the general public. We do kind of use that as a guidepost. So board discussions kind of are all aligned with the strategic plan. We ask our councils to kind of map their activities back to that strategic plan, almost like a lighthouse guiding us as a ship to try to continue heading in the right direction. And then maybe I'll ask you, I know you're tasked with kind of having you and your team operationalizing the plan. What do you see as becoming beneficial for the profession, for our members?
Yeah, I think the benefit I see, particularly as we operationalize it, is the understanding of how the board's overall direction and oversight role translates directly to the tasks that we're managing every day, and how staff then understand the connection with what they're doing with the overall intent of where the board wants to go with it strategically, and how all the dots can be connected in that fashion. Because once you understand that, you really can see the impact that you're making, right? So whether it's serving a certain stakeholder, advancing a certain policy issue, reinforcing the importance of professionalism structures, it all connects to where the strategy is trying to move the organization, how the board is really working to influence that. And so I think that is really critical. And on the flip side of that is it makes the outcome that much more member-centric, which is really what we're aiming to do, is to serve the member best and make sure that they see the value in membership in the Academy, as well as the broader opportunity where the Academy plays a role in society and serving the public. And so I really do think the strategic plan is really that guidepost. Like you said, it's like that lighthouse that's guiding and directing, but not in a prescriptive manner. It's very much principle-based so that you can look at and be responsive to the dynamics in the environment and in the insurance market because things do change, right? And priorities do change. And I think the strategic plan is not overly rigid, but rather it just provides that guide as to where we're trying to go and how we're trying to best serve the stakeholders that we do.
Yeah, good stuff.
Let me take a moment to remind listeners that you are listening to Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries, where we talk with Academy leaders, volunteers, and friends of the Academy about what excites them both professionally and through their volunteer work. On August 26th in Denver, the Academy is hosting the VM22 Practitioners Forum, Beyond the Basics, Navigating VM22 in Practice. This half-day event brings experienced actuaries together for practical discussions on implementation, governance, capital and reinsurance, pricing, and more. And don't forget to subscribe to Actuary Voices on your preferred podcast platform. Now back to the conversation with Bill and Tricia.
So let's talk a little bit more about stakeholders for a minute, because I do think actuaries play a significant role engaging with many stakeholders. We've talked about the Hill visits. We talked a little bit about state regulators. What do you want actuaries to understand about their role engaging with stakeholders and being ambassadors for the profession?
Yeah, so one thing I will say, we had a meeting earlier today with an employer group, and this came up. One thing that may not be obvious for those that haven't been volunteering or haven't been doing it for long is playing a role in that is so good for your own personal development. So something that came up earlier today was that a lot of actuaries newer to the profession have more of a desire to give back to the community. That's, I think, a little bit more of a trend for, folks earlier in their career. I've been volunteering with the Academy for a long, long time. And the value you get in terms of career development, like the ability to understand bigger issues, work with people that just have a diverse perspective. So they come from a different background. Some of them have tons of knowledge in a topical area. You get opportunities to lead. So there's a lot that we do that is kind of focused on the public good. But I think the value that an individual actuary gets from participating in that is incredible. And it's hard to even understand how good it's going to be until you've been through it. So I've just gotten so much value from volunteering with the Academy, and I would encourage anybody to do it.
Yeah, volunteerism, it is truly amazing. And I've always personally seen it as, like you said, as an opportunity to grow yourself as well as make an impact. Right? So you have that dual kind of mode there where it is self-serving, but it also gives back something to the profession that so many of our members are just passionate about. So it really is contagious when you're in a committee setting and people are talking about issues and ideas and throwing things out there. And it's exciting to see that come to life. And then when you see that translate into the end product, which a stakeholder can then benefit from, right? So ultimately, it's so great to see that connection, as well as just what I've witnessed, particularly about new volunteers coming into the mix, is how the existing volunteer groups do mentor and coach, where there's a really nice symbiotic kind of situation that happens where they do kind of connect. They want people to be successful. They want people to find that opportunity to contribute in a way that's right for them. So it's not like one size fits all, but rather how do we foster that environment where everyone can contribute and feel like they're making an impact in whatever way that is right for them, right? So I think that's so great. And it's something that we'll be seeing. We have the call for volunteers coming up later this year. We'll hopefully get a new mix of volunteers coming in to add to the work that our volunteers are already doing. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah. I'm just going to add that there's a spot for anyone. So I was very low knowledge when I started, and it is intimidating, but there's room for folks to, do a little bit of research, be a secondary review on a document to make sure it's understandable. Just, I would say again, volunteering is a great, great opportunity, and I would encourage anyone to do it at any experience level.
Yeah, speaking of that, I did want to dig into your experience. I know you've been the chair of many policy committees. You've also been the chair of the ASB. What have your volunteer experiences meant to your career and how you've evolved as an actuary as well as a leader?
It's been amazing. I'm like with this role where I was like very surprised and very honored to be asked. The same was true when I first joined the ASB. I had done some standards work, but not a ton, and via a referral from someone that mentored me. So again, the mentorship idea, it definitely rings true for me from my early days. So through that referral, I was asked to join the standards board. Things I didn't mention already in terms of learning. I mean, definitely you get a lot of exposure to other practice areas, which is great. because these things are interrelated. I think a lot of our education and our day jobs is very siloed sometimes. So having exposure to other practice areas, exposure to people with tremendous knowledge. So just a ton of learning, technical and professionalism. And then, a lot of leadership skills that are different than you might get in your day jobs. Being on the ASB, it's really important to balance hearing everybody and moving forward. That's true on the Academy board as well. It's true in a lot of Academy committees. And I'm not saying that's not true in a day job, but it's just very different because you have more diversity of the people and you're all volunteers and have other time commitments. So I just feel like a lot of those skills that leaders need to, manage kind of getting good input, but moving forward appropriately. I mean, kind of all my volunteer work has been very helpful in terms of that skill set.
Yeah, no, I love the aspect of learning that you mentioned, just because you learn from other actuaries in the mix, as well as the stakeholders you're meeting with, right? Whether they have a significant depth on an issue or they're just asking questions that perhaps you haven't considered before. So it is such a dynamic situation there, no different than whether if you're on an ASB committee and you're looking at comments from an exposure, or you're looking at if you're doing a testimony in front of a certain panel, whether it's on the Hill or it's at the state level, you're still learning so much through that interaction beyond just the technical topics, right? There's just that person-to-person contact that you benefit from in a business environment, which is just great to see. One question I want to ask, and we've been having calls with various stakeholders, employers, insurance commissioners. We've been doing the Hill visits every year, and we talk to a lot of agencies at the federal level. Why do you think that level of engagement and input gathering is so important to the Academy and where we're going as an organization?
Yeah, so I think you alluded to this a little bit before. So I think something that is really important for us to succeed in our mission is to meet our stakeholders where they are. We want to get in front of them with whatever we're working on, but even before that, it's really important to understand what they need. So ongoing engagement so that it's a two-way discussion. So we get input in terms of what they're looking for, what they need, what their problems are. That can go back to the board, to the practice councils, to the committees. And then that can help guide those volunteers on where they can add value to the stakeholder. And then the information goes back out and kind of respond to that need. And I think something that can be tricky for us is doing it fast, because it has to be balanced. It has to be objective. And to get to something balanced and objective, you need time. So we're always going to have to kind of toe that line. But I think that two-way communication with the stakeholders is really important for us to succeed in what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that our members understand that same level of interest and information gathering is happening there too. I mean, you recall last year we did our last member value survey. We've been trying to do that every few years, where we go out to the membership and we ask them about what they see value in, where they have need. And we really try to look at that intelligence and how that could then inform new programs or improvements to existing programs. So trying to encourage that two-way communication with stakeholders, including our members, is really important for us to continue evolving as an organization as well. So I couldn't agree with you more on the need to just be listening and really figuring out how what we hear can be applied in a way that really does provide greater value for those that we're talking to and serving.
Yeah, and I know just an example of that, we got some great feedback in the member value survey about how much the members rely on us for professionalism content. And I think there's been a lot of activity, not only to make sure we have a lot of that content, but to make it a combination of content rich and interesting, like case studies, different ways of providing the content. So not just webinars, but doing things in person at different meetings. So yeah, I agree with you. Getting that input really does have an impact on how we then, kind of go back and deliver value.
Yes, and I think one thing our members may not realize is that we have done some pretty significant things with the information we gathered. It resulted in us developing and implementing a new website. It resulted in us launching Academy Learning, where members can now go and access learning, including free recorded webinars in one place. So it's all packaged in a way that's easy to use and intuitive. We do listen and we do try to apply those learnings. And I encourage our members to continue sharing their feedback with us. We want to hear it.
And that leads me to want to ask another question. So, I feel like there's been a lot of things that have happened with the Academy in your time, so in the 5 years. What of those kind of improvements or initiatives, what would you say you're most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of opening up that communication with our members, ensuring that they understand that we are listening, that we are interested in what they have to say, and that we want to make sure they understand the Academy is not just an organization that provides a designation they can use, behind their name, but that it's a community. And we're trying to build a community that is dynamic and ever changing, particularly where they need us to change and adapt to serve their needs. And on the flip side of that is really investing in our staff and the talent we have at the organization and making sure members see that and that they understand the expertise that resides within our staff, whether it be staffers that are supporting professionalism structures like the ASB, the ABCD, staff that are working on the Hill and interacting with agencies on where's public policy going as far as issues are concerned, to our IT folks, to our marketing communications folks that are trying to message really complex issues in an appropriate manner and develop new platforms like this podcast where we can engage with our members in different formats because not everyone learns the same way, not everyone digests information the same way. So we're trying to really listen to the members, and I think that is something that has been a significant investment that we've been making over the last few years. And we will continue to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it.
So as I mentioned before, you are halfway through your term. Obviously, becoming president is a big task, right? That you take on a lot of work and you make it look seamless and effortless. But I want to know, what has being president of the Academy meant to you as an actuary and as a member yourself?
So you know this, I love the organization and our mission. I was thrilled to take the role. And I would just say, like, it has far surpassed any expectations I had. So just being able to participate in all the amazing work that the Academy does, representing us with stakeholders, being able to recognize volunteers for their service. Some of them I didn't know before. And then I get to hear about this amazing work they've done, research or presentations or stakeholder engagement, and recognizing their service, building relationships with other actuarial leaders across North America, not just in the US. Some of those folks I now have lifetime connections with, which is fantastic. So I just feel lucky every day that I get to do this. And I'm just going to throw in a thank you to the Academy for giving me this opportunity.
Well, we're lucky to have you. So thank you.
Thank you. I just was going to ask you, I mean, if you're leading the Academy, what has that taught you about the profession, what's going on right now, why we're important to our members?
Yeah, I think right now we are navigating an interesting environment that we're in, whether it be business, political, technology, obviously with the ongoing emergence and evolution of AI. I think it's such a dynamic time that obviously has challenges and risks, but so much opportunity. And I think the Academy really sits at that place right now where it is so deep on various issues and topics that are relevant today, but it also has an opportunity to influence and inform on those issues as they move toward tomorrow and whatever tomorrow brings. So I just feel like the way that we approach the issues as a nonpartisan voice, as an objective, independent voice, really helps those decision makers or those that are receiving it understand that we're here to help and that we're here to support a better decision or a better outcome that even as consumers ourselves, we benefit from, right? So it's great to see how that all works together. And I think that's what's exciting. When I look at our staff and our volunteers, we have such a great resource there. And our staff are so committed and dedicated just as much as our volunteers are dedicated. And I think that relationship that you get to see and witness and see how that grows, where you have volunteers supporting and mentoring staff and vice versa. And it's such a great opportunity to really grow professionally. So it's just ripe for so much growth. And that's what excites me most about the Academy is that people don't see that unless they get involved, right? So if nothing else, if we're going to be a commercial for getting involved, I would say, please get involved. It's a great place to be. And the profession is at a place where it's just growing and there's so much more we can be doing that I think that there's so much opportunity as we kind of continue to look at some of these issues and concerns. And not only that, the policy side, but just looking at professionalism. I think the structures that we have in place, they work so effectively, yet so many don't necessarily understand how it works until they're involved. And I think that's a missed opportunity because those structures are there to guide the profession and everyone in it. And it really benefits those that we serve. And I think if the public doesn't understand that, they miss out on understanding the importance of self-regulation, but they really miss out on what an actuary brings to bear and the value they can bring. I mean, personally, I'd love every person that you interact with on the street to know what an actuary does and to encourage their kids to get involved, love math. It's not just math, though. There's so much more that can be done. And it's very rare that you see a profession connect technical skills with real impact and real contributions to broader society, which is exciting.
Very well said.
Well, thank you. One thing I want to dig into as president, you still have time left, right? You're only halfway through. What are you most excited about in your remainder as president?
It's hard to decide. There's a lot of very exciting things going on. There's some work we're doing around what I'm going to call a in-between strategic plan. So we have our strategic plan, that's been in place for a long time. We, maybe streamline some of the language, but again, that's our long-term guidepost. And then we have a lot of activity that's strategic in nature every year. So I talked a little bit about the governance work, the reputational risk, but trying to connect the actions in any given year to hitting those longer-term goals. So I would love as a long-term goal for every actuary to be a member of the Academy, but maybe kind of trying to break that down into what are some things we're going to do this year, next year, the year after to really kind of get to that long-term strategic objective. I'm pretty excited about that work for the second half of the year.
Yeah, for sure. That will be exciting, for sure. So Tricia, thanks so much for this conversation. It's really been enlightening, even though I get to interact with you so much. So much of your passion came through, and I hope that our members, as well as our many stakeholders tuning in, will feel that, and they'll want to get involved in any way they can. This year, we will end every episode with our guests answering a question left by our previous guest, and then leaving a question for our next guest. Our last guest asked you, how are you using AI in your work and day-to-day life to become efficient? And what have you found the most valuable thus far?
That is a very good question from that last guest. So I do use AI quite a bit. I use it with appropriate caution. I don't, trust it with everything. So I would say I probably use it more in my day-to-day life. So I've gotten to the point where, my children laugh at me because they'll ask me a question and I say to them, ask chat. So I use it for finding flights, finding restaurants, answering questions, designing spaces, giving me recipes, you name it, all kinds of things. At work, I do use it as well. We have a secure tool because of the importance of confidentiality. I would say the primary thing I use it for and where I'm getting the most value professionally is research. So I feel like things I used to spend a lot of time digging through laws or past presentations, things like that. I can get 90% of what I need from AI. And then I do some fact checking, of course, but it's a very good tool for things that are research oriented. And then a couple other places I use it. That's probably the highest value, but I do use it to do what I'm going to call compliance checks. Mm-hmm. So, if I write something that, has to meet certain standards, I can have Copilot check me and make sure I met the standards. And then just drafting documents. So writing reports, doing a first cut at a presentation, email, etc. So it's really good at all of those. One thing I personally have not done with AI, I'm sure there's actuaries that have, but I haven't really yet used it to build a model or do the bottom-up quantitative analysis. But I think that's not far behind. I think that's coming soon. So I probably will, maybe if I do a podcast next year and I get this question again, I can talk about that. So yeah, I would say that's kind of the summary of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think it's a tool that everyone needs to play with and use and see how they can enhance their own knowledge of how those tools work, as well as the fact that they're changing so rapidly. So you have to just get involved. You have to immerse yourself in it to then benefit from it and just kind of see where it goes. But I do think your caution is appropriate. We talk a lot about the ethical implications as well as just the need to verify, trust but verify. And I think that's an important part of we need to still review the outputs and ensure that it's representing the appropriate level of knowledge and that it's accurate as well.
Yes.
All right, so now it's your turn. Do you have a question that you would like to leave for our next guest?
Let's see. For our next guest, I am wondering if that person has any suggestions for Academy leadership for how we could better serve our members and provide value to our members.
It's a great question. And we look forward to that input and that response.
Yes, we look forward to that for sure.
Well, thank you. This has been a great conversation, and we look forward to the remainder of your presidency and all the great things that the Academy is going to accomplish under your leadership. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to a conversation with Bill Michalisin, Executive Director of the Academy, and Academy President Tricia Matson on Actuary Voices, the podcast from the American Academy of Actuaries. Please visit our website, actuary.org, for a wealth of information about the work that the Academy does. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok. And please subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast platform.